Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of The Real Podcasters, the show where, as ever, we're talking all things movies, TV shows, video games, and a bunch of other things in no particular order. My name's Regan, as ever, and I'm joined once again by my critically acclaimed Sangheili co-host. It's Dan.
Hello, you maniac jackal sniper.
Oh, I thought you were going to call me a grunt. Again.
Well, I did that in the other one, so I'm just kind of slowly making my way through Covenant insults.
What are they known as? Is it Ungoi? I think it is.
Ugnoi or something like that.
Ugnoi, the poor things.
Yeah. Ugnoi.
As you can probably tell from the insults, we're going to be discussing a bit of Halo again, this time with Halo Reach. Of course, we've already spoke about a few of the Halo games in previous episodes. Yeah, just 3, 4. Is it 4? It is 4. We're actually on to 5. Oof. We're actually on to the 5th one. But not actually the 5th one, if we're going to get specific. That's later on. Last week, we did talk about Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, episode that's done remarkably well, actually, for the podcast. So thank you very much for that support.
Thank you.
So am I.
People actually listen to us.
So obviously... Yeah, exactly.
Who would have thought like to be
idiots.
Yeah, two idiots from the northeast of England with nothing better to do than rant and rivet about films would get so much attention.
I mean, we say so much attention. It's not really. It's just slightly more than normal.
Better
but
than nothing. Hopefully
one day we'll break like the 100 views. That'd be quite nice. So, hint, hint, wink, wink, everyone. So of course, just keep on supporting the podcast as you are. Keep on watching. Keep on subscribing. We're on YouTube, Spotify, all that sort of stuff. But yes, as I said before, we are going to be discussing Halo Reach this go around, released back in 2010 as the final game in the series to be developed by Bungie, before moving on to 343 Industries with Halo 4 and onwards. I have quite a lot of nostalgia for this game. I don't know about you, Dan, but this is probably my most nostalgic Halo game.
I wouldn't
because
say
technically it was the first one I ever
as
played.
Nostalgic compared to Halo 3, but definitely up there with in nostalgia. I mean, it's very nostalgic, but nothing compared to Halo 3. Absolutely nothing.
So did you start playing this when this first came out then?
No, to be honest. As I say, I just got Halo 3 whenever and played Halo 3 to death and then got introduced to Halo Reach and then it was just sort of I'll just play Halo Reach from now on. But I think it's tough to say. I mean, there's definitely... We can obviously talk about it a bit later on, but it's a tie between, what I think is... Halo Reach is probably my favourite Halo game. But then I look at 3 and I'm like, well... So
it gets close.
Yeah, it gets very close. I mean, I kid you not, there's about a millimeter's difference. It's that small.
That's very, very specific, Dan.
It's that small, man.
No, I first played this game in the middle of, I think it was about 2011, when my stepbrother showed it off for the first time. I was vaguely aware of the franchise at that point, mostly in just the iconography, like the Spartans and maybe a couple of elites. But that was my first time playing any of the games. So, as I say, it holds a great deal of nostalgia for myself. I mean, yeah, I could see flaws, even back then, but I always enjoyed playing it, a lot. It was probably one of my most replayed games on the Xbox 360. That was one of the first games I actually owned for it as well. But it's interesting because I don't have nearly as much nostalgia for the multiplayer side of things because I didn't have Xbox Live until about 2013. And so it was always funny when I got to the point where you get to the rank of warrant officer and you can't get any further very, very quickly at all. You're just stuck because it takes so long to get from warrant officer to the next one. So I was stuck, I kid you not, for years. Because if you wanted extra credits and stuff, you had to be online. And I was like, No, I don't have that.
Yeah, I
like
think
any credits and stuff I got was just from the campaign because I didn't have anything else.
I had live when I started playing it, but I used to like do a lot of co-op stuff with my little sister, and she didn't have live, so like her rank would just go up like ridiculously fast, whereas mine would go up like literally micrometers. It like the tiniest bit of XP would not make a dint.
Oh yeah, it was pointless.
It was absolutely pointless.
Yeah. That being said, I still have, I still really enjoyed it like back then. As the years have gone on, I mean, I don't know how much has changed. I mean, it's still probably the most replayable game in the series for me. I'm usually quite happy to just jump on and play a bit of Reach. I do like the different style and tone compared to the previous games. Like you can tell immediately just from the look of it. I also really love the score.
Oh, the score's brilliant.
I think it's fantastic. And that being said, while it's still really easy to replay, it's not the most memorable, to be honest. And there is a major issue I've got with like a severe lack of emotional impact. When every character's getting offed one after the other, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize it was possible to care even less. So well done, Bungie, on that one for your final game in the series. You made us care even less.
I've cared more for shooting little grunts in the face.
Of which we did a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Especially during COVID, we did that a lot.
Yeah, we've killed so many grunts.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of your general current thoughts, how are they?
Kind of going on from what you said about replayability, I still think that 3 is probably the most replayable for me out of the entire series. I can just easily go back to that. Like, I could play through the campaign like 2 or 3 times if I really wanted to, because I just love it. With this, yeah, it's definitely replayable, but I think that especially when you get later in the game and like half your squaddies are just being killed off, there's not really much care for it. You really want to have a lot of emotional investment in something like this, and considering this particular game is a lot more gritty and, you know, a bit of a tonal shift compared to 3. A lot darker, a lot more gritty. A bit more realism to it, I think. Because with 3 it was like, well, you're a Spartan, you're pretty much invincible, whereas Reach, it's kind of like, well, yeah, you aren't invincible. I mean, half your squad is just being killed off. Yeah, I mean, I still enjoy it. I still replay it from time to time, but I'm nowhere near as sort of enjoyable as it used to be, I think. I think it's just characters and stuff like that. I mean, it's the emotional impact, especially like, there's only really one I could name that I actually felt for a little bit, and that was George.
Stupid George.
George and Emil, I think those two were the most like impactful. The others couldn't care.
No, we'll definitely get into the emotional side of things, or severe lack thereof, in a little bit. Yeah, severe lack thereof. So, as I mentioned in the previous episode when we spoke about ODST, I did mention about how Bungie wanted to go independent from Microsoft, so they were like, okay, just make 2 more games and then give us the rights, and then it's fine, you can go. So this was the final game in that contract. I know we got Halo Wars from someone else during that time. That didn't count.
No, it's
but yeah, I've never played it, and I just refuse to. I don't like top-down strategy things.
It's just a top-down strategy game, and it is just infuriating. I've played it, I've completed it, I never ever want to play it again.
No, I think I was going to, because I quite liked the front cover, and then I saw it was top-down, I was like, no, I'd rather play this on a phone, and I wouldn't even play it on a phone, frankly.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
But yeah, as saying, Reach was the final game of that contract, and it was an interesting like development side of things, because unlike with the previous games, had multiple years in development, not unlike ODST. There's very loose ties to the rest of the Halo franchise, unlike Halo 3, and they had experienced staff, unlike the original game. So overall, it was a lot smoother and was just made to be the biggest and best Halo game yet. Biggest, maybe. Best, depending on which day. So this is, of course, a prequel to the original game, which I thought that's quite a smart move, to be honest.
I've always liked the fact that it's a prequel.
In this case, you are on the planet Reach, which I didn't realise was the name of the planet until I started playing this, because I thought, what a weird title to give a game. Like, are they reaching for something? Oh no, it's just the name of the planet. Like, because I hadn't played the original game at that point, so I forgot that they do reference Reach in like the first mission. I'm like, you guys actually planned for this, you crazy fools. But because there's such loose ties to the franchise, you're not playing as Master Chief, just make a quick cameo. But you play it as Noble 6, a mostly silent Spartan that you get to customize to your own design.
Which was the first game to do
was drafted in. Yeah, and still the only one, technically. I think, is it the only
Halo
one?
4.
I think it is, yeah.
On the multiplayer side of it.
Well, yeah, on the multiplayer side of things. But yeah, you play Noble 6, who's drafted in to replace a previous Spartan in Noble Team. A group of Spartan 3s, not Spartan 2s. I always forget that they're actually 3s. Tasked with investigating a looming Covenant threat on the human colony world of Reach. As I say, alluded to in prior games. I think I got an animated movie as well, in some shape or form, or TV miniseries. Didn't watch it. Apparently it's quite good. So, I mean, as a character, Noble 6 is nothing interesting. They're literally just there.
It kind of goes back to what we were saying about the other Halo games, where there's no, like... Well, I think we said it more or less for Combat Evolved, where you just take on this person and then, like, your voice is that person's voice, etc., etc. Because, I mean, yeah, it's clever they do that, but I'm like, I kind of want something a bit more interesting here.
Yeah, that's something that's going to be referenced when we discuss Halo 4 in a couple of weeks. Because that's something that's really cool. Hafolo, yes. How have we not done that yet? Oh yeah, because we haven't talked about the damn thing yet. Damn it, Dan.
But does that technically make Reach as... Oh, it's going to be quite hard to pronounce, actually, because it would be like Halo 0, because it's a prequel, so it'd be the first one.
We're doing well to still be doing this, folks.
You started this with Scream.
I think I did. I'm pretty... Yeah, actually, yeah, it will have been. It's just a question of if it started when we first spoke about the 5th film, as I'm now going to say it deliberately, or if it was after the fact, because then if that's the case, we've been doing this for like a year and a half.
Yeah, and we're not letting up, so if you're expecting us to be a lot more mature about names and numbers, it's not happening.
No. Yeah, I would probably recommend a different podcast, you know, like, I was about to say Graveyard Chit Chat, we do exactly the same thing there. If not even worse. But yeah, I mean, Noble 6 is not meant to be seen as like a proper character, really. They're just there, well, as the opening shot of the game suggests, to die. Which I thought was a very clever movie, even if it means, wow, I cared a little bit. Now I care even less. I'm like, nope, not dead yet.
It was like an M. Night Shyamalan twist in a video game.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can remember saying that for the first time, and I was like, I think I designed my Spartan like that. I can't remember because I haven't started yet. But hey ho, whatever. But of course, you've got the rest of Noble Team, who have about as much intrigue and emotion as a flower pot. That's about to be glassed. I just...
About as much intrigue and emotion as a flower pot.
Well, I was about to say like a slice of bread, but I'm sure I've used that before, and someone else will probably use it for Clara when talking about episodes of Doctor Who, I think. Which we don't need to talk about, so it's fine. It's interesting, actually, in the development side of things. It was going to be 7 Spartans in Noble Team beyond Noble 6, and then cut it down to 5 because, well, we really had to care about them. And I was sat there thinking, I mean, I'm glad it wasn't 7 because I didn't realize I could go into negative figures for caring. Because, yeah, you just don't. I mean, they exist mostly just for exposition and padding out the various arenas that you fight in. You never really see them as people, just purely as soldiers with a job to do. In fact, now come to think about it, I think there's only one scene in the entire game where they're all together and they're talking, and it's not like a military briefing. I think it's I can't remember which moment it is, but I think it's just before Long Night of Solace, the mission where you go up into space, and I think they're talking about how to take down the carrier. That's like the closest you get to just the main people.
Yeah, I think
and it's annoying.
It's around that time in the mission timeline, I think. I'm pretty sure it is.
Something like that.
But yeah, it is pretty annoying that is the only, like, human element to it. The other time, they're just, well, soldiers on a battlefield. And as you say, like, they're just there to basically pad out an arena fight, really.
I mean, that'd be fine if there was still any, like, impact, especially when they're taken out. I mean, I'd probably say the only time I felt particularly close to feeling just a bit of anything at a death was actually with Kat, I think. When she randomly gets shot.
See,
I thought that was the only time I actually cared.
Laughed at that death.
Really?
Yeah, because I just thought it was so pathetic to die like that. You spent all this time hunting down elite zealots to get taken out by one. I'm like, that is the stupidest piece of revenge I think I've ever seen. You killed all my brothers, now you pay. It's literally like Rambo, but Covenant version of Rambo. And I just laughed. I just thought, wow, that's how you're killing her off. And then it tries to do all this, like, you know, somber music. I'm like, I don't care. I literally just do not give an absolute toss right now.
Yeah, I think the music is the only saving grace for any sort of emotion. That's the only time you actually feel anything, is just because of that. And again, it's like, I mean, I was thinking about this more recently. I feel like there might have been a better response from me, I think, if these moments happen during gameplay and not in a cutscene, because then there's you can't actually interact with this. Yeah. But then I don't know how you're going to do that, because then it would still come out of left field.
I think it would be.
I suppose there's George as well. Yeah, I mean, there's George as well on like the cruiser, but I see.
Yeah,
otherwise.
it's like how do you incorporate that particular cutscene into actual gameplay? Because I would find that very difficult to do. Because it would be very, very brief. I imagine it would be like, oh, press this to like escape during a time limit, and then you land on the moon, and then Finn.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what she is.
Yeah, because you probably have to turn it into like a quick time event or something, which they can be hit or miss. And Halo did a good job until the next one of not like going down that. I suppose as well, there's like towards the end when you're left on your own fighting off like a ceaseless array of alien idiots. But again, it's like there's just nothing there. And again, it's replayable, but that's mostly just down to the combat, to be honest, more than anything else in the gameplay. But it's certainly not for the story.
Yeah, the story's... I mean, look, it is a good story, but it's like it kind of loses a lot of my interest when, particularly with characters. Like, if there actually was a lot more... What's the word? Well, I think if there was just feeling for other characters besides Noble Six, then it probably might have been a better storyline. Mm-hmm. Because it's just all in cutscenes, and it's like, well, I don't want to watch a cutscene, I'm just going to skip it. I want to play the game.
Yeah, the amount that I'd end up just skipping and then just not realising that someone... Like I think I actually missed... I think I skipped the one when Kat's killed. So when it goes to the next mission and she's not there, and I'm like, wait, what the hell have I missed? And then I'm like, oh, okay. Great, I missed that.
I think the only one that I didn't skip was Carter's one, because that's pretty much just over and done with very quickly.
Thank God he died. Wasn't a fan of him. Well, wasn't a fan of any of them, really. Maybe June, just because he just didn't care less. But yeah, it's still quite annoying that they couldn't actually bother to try and get some emotional weight out of this, but this is the 5th game in the series, and we've already said before, there's not
It's
a
not
whole
like
lot
it's totally
in
not
reality.
there, but like I think the majority of
it's
people
not.
just don't really give a crap.
In terms of a setting as well for Reach, I mean, I find it quite interesting, but I feel like it's kind of like a cop-out setting to have like an Earth-like world, but not actually have it be Earth for the sake of making it a prequel.
I think that's probably one of my nitpicks with it. Like, you're giving me all this, like, spacey stuff, but we're just kind of on a... It's kind of just like ODST all over again. When you've got, like, the really human planet.
Which is weird, because I'd say those are my favourite bits of it. That, like 2 of my favourite missions, I think, is actually Exodus and New Alexandria.
Oh, really?
So, like... For some reason, I've never really been able to understand why, because I know they're people's least favourite.
Particularly
especially Exodus. People really don't like that one. I actually don't mind it. Because I think it's the closest way you start to feel like you're like overwhelmed during this war.
Yeah.
So I think it works really well. And as I say, like in terms of like design, I think it's pretty spot on. It looks like a nice futuristic sea, even if it's on fire. But yeah, otherwise, it could have easily been Earth, to be honest. Though I do appreciate the fact it's not another Halo ring, because there's no, for one, you couldn't do it. Just wait until we get to Halo Infinite, then, which you've already...
I mean, we expressed it with, like, the first 3 games. Like, it's like, how many times can you do the whole Halo ring plot line without it just getting the same? But this, I'm kind of glad it isn't, even though, like, I would have preferred it just to not be like new Earth all over again, but I don't really mind it too much.
No, the other thing I don't like, and this goes back to with Noble Team themselves, is that they don't actually have a goal until the end of the penultimate mission.
Yeah.
Because like they spend the entire time just running around trying to get intel on the Covenants on how to stop this invasion, and I'm like, yeah, but we know it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's just delaying the inevitable, essentially.
Yeah, and it is absolutely like the last like couple of missions where it's like you've spent all this time and this is your goal now. Like, surely you'd know your goal from the first get-go, not the like second to last mission.
Yeah. Which, on the one hand, I do like the fact that the whole thing is they have to get Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn to essentially start the series. I was like, I don't mind that. It's just the fact it took so long to get to that point. Like, even something like, I remember when you finish playing the second mission and you're at Sword Base, and then at the end you're talking to Dr. Halsey, and then the entire thing that she wants to know about is the mission before, not the mission you've just done.
Yeah.
And then cuts to the sniper mission, seemingly out of nowhere. And you just sat there thinking,
you know what it is?
So
the sniper mission
which bit's
just
important
feels
and which one
highly
isn't?
irrelevant. As like, I think it's the most irrelevant mission out of that entire mission sequence in Reach, because you literally just dropped in at night, and what the hell is the objective? Like,
yeah, exactly.
What's the point?
I'll say that I always remember getting a little bit spooked by the. I mean, I don't know the name of the creatures. Of course, I don't.
The weird rancor-looking
like
things.
Yeah, and how if you get too close and they just start chasing you, and I remember just like bolting the other way, just like nope, like a lot. But that, again, that's the closest you're gonna get to emotional weight. But yeah, it's like you say, most of it is just irrelevant. It feels like they had one bit of the story mapped out, and then like, oh damn, that's just like,
do you know what it is? It's
a mission or
basically
two.
like part 1 of Tip of the
DLC.
Spear. That is it, because it's actually just that like set up to Tip of the Spear. Because all you're doing in that mission, I think it's Nightfall, it's called, is you're basically just going to a lookout point to look at these AA guns, and then you go into Tip of the Spear. I'm like, you could have literally just done that in a cutscene. Why bother making me do all this like stealthy stuff? Which, by the way, you can. I mean, every Halo Reach player knows this. You can just absolutely speed run that mission. Like, you don't even need to do it. You could just absolutely peg it and do it.
I'm sure I tried to do it, and I think I just about got it.
It still works after all these years. With the forklift and the gate. It still works. All these years later.
I'm sure we tried to do it, didn't we? Back during COVID.
Yeah, and it failed.
And I think the only reason we couldn't do it was because my internet was garbage.
Yeah.
So it was probably just a lot of lag. In terms of favorite missions, as I say, Exos I really like. I do really like New Alexandria, but I think that's mostly because I end up just getting sidetracked by going to different buildings and blowing stuff up, but also the Easter egg where you can fly through. I think it's 2 random buildings off in the corner, and you turn into a pelican.
Yeah, it's
which I think is hilarious.
I think that's the far side of the map. There's a tower building that has a button, and then you press the button, and then you either go into this ring building as the falcon, and you turn into a pelican, or you do it with a banshee and it turns into a phantom.
Yeah, I remember doing the doing the Phantom one a lot, just only because I think it's still my favorite version of the Phantom in the entire series.
Oh, I've always
I think even just for the sound,
the Reach Covenant vehicles and stuff like that. I've always liked the look of them. Again, it's a lot more gritty and doesn't look as cartoony in this version compared to the others.
What I find is interesting, it's just a nice bit of trivia. So this game came out in 2010 and has this version of the Phantom. A year later, we get Transformers Dark of the Moon, which has Covenant vehicles that look suspiciously like a Phantom, but with weird dreadlock things hanging underneath, and has a very similar sort of sound effect as it moves around. And I'm sat there thinking, Michael B., you already steal from bloody Star Wars. You don't need to steal from Halo next. I remember seeing that film in the cinema, and I turned to my mate Jordan, and he was looking at me at exactly the same point. He's like, "That's a Phantom, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Otherwise, I think my favorite mission is probably Tip of the Spear, which is probably the same for a lot of people. It's
quite tough for me because you know what it is. I'm kind of the same. I do quite like Exodus. I wouldn't say it's my favourite though out of all of it. I think my favourite is actually not the last mission, but the one before it. I can't remember what the hell it's called. Basically, you have to go to Dr. Halsey's base, and although it is a long mission, it's essentially you return to Sword Base, and it is in just absolute... it's just dilapidated at this point, to be honest.
There was something that I didn't pick up on until a lot more recently. When that mission opens, and it's the sunset, and you're in a flooded kind of town.
Yeah.
That's actually the town from the second mission, but for continuity reasons is now flooded because the planet's getting glassed. So all the ice and the icebergs around the place have just melted.
Yeah.
Hence why the town's now flooded. I did not pick up on that for so many years
as to why it was flooded, and I never picked up on that.
But also because I recognised the top of the buildings because I kept on getting stuck on them in the second mission. I was like, oh my god, that is actually the reason. I was like, that's a nice attention to detail.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Because you always kind of remember
shame about the rest of us.
Bloomin' little building, because there's always a skirmisher on the top of it with his little needle rifle. The little asshole.
Yeah. I think in terms of disappointing missions, though, I'd probably say Long Night of Solace, because the space combat is absolutely dire.
Regan, don't even get me started on that mission.
We're going to have to now, though.
We're going to have to.
Just quickly.
Playing that on Legendary is torture. It has possibly the worst checkpoint system in the entirety of the game.
I'd say so.
The space combat is just absolutely atrocious as well. For half of that thing, you're spending 40 minutes just hiding behind the space station Anchor 9, just praying that a Banshee doesn't follow you around.
Or a Seraph. Or Seraph. How the hell you say it? Yeah, it's just... I mean, I appreciate the fact that they are trying to do some. This is like the fourth new thing that like they've added into each one.
Yeah, I mean, at least they're going with like vehicular combat in space and stuff like that. Because Halo is all about space and stuff like that. So at least they give you that, but it's just an infuriating mission.
But I think what makes it even more annoying is the fact that the vehicle like stuff overall, I think is really solid. Like I still think driving the Warthog in this is the best of the entire franchise, including the newer ones. It just feels just really tactile. And that's the same with all the vehicles really. I love the Falcon. I think it's fantastic. It's one of my favourite vehicles in the series. I have heard rumours that it might be popping up in Halo Infinite in the multiplayer side of things later on in the year. So I'm like, please. Because if there's one thing I hated the Hornet, which I'm sure I said when we spoke about Halo 3, but I despise the Hornet.
Yeah, because I think that was like, more down to the controls more than anything, because it was like one bumper
because
to elevate, and then the other
forgot.
one was to actually jump out of it, which I've never liked.
Yeah,
I always
like,
made that mistake.
Oh, the amount I can remember playing the final mission of Halo 3, and I can remember you just like standing there and laughing for every single time I got into a Hornet, and then just decided, you know what, I'd like to be on the ground very, very quickly.
Yeah, it was the mission, the Covenant, and basically like the last part of the mission is you have to destroy 2 Skyr tanks before breaching into the Prophet of Truth's hide, or whatever it's called, some like fancy pants building, and you've got to destroy these 2 Skyr tanks. And I just have such fond memories of you just going up in the Hornet. You're in the sky, and then you press the wrong button. You just see you just go down like a rock.
I think like eventually I just gave up and I was like, you know what, I'm going to be on the turrets instead, and just let the artificial intelligence take over.
Well, that didn't really help, because I just remember you just getting blown out of the sky.
Just like, I'm going to go over here, like, no, over this way. No, I'd like to go over there.
The famous Regan expletives were like, oh, you absolute beep, 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 beep.
So many beep beeps. But yeah, it's overall the vehicle combat is fairly solid, save for the supers.
It's fine for the land vehicles,
stuff.
But the saber stuff, horrible.
And it's a shame because the gameplay overall, I think, is still some of the best of the series. It's at least the most consistent. And I think one of the reasons why I play this game so much is because compared to Halo 3, because I think Halo 3's got the better story. But the reason I don't play that one very often is because I prefer the faster pace of Reach.
Yeah.
Like, even something as simple as, like, the sprint. I know that's always been a controversial thing for some people. I think the only thing that I don't like is the fact that it's classed as a armor ability.
Yeah, I've never...
Which I kind of hate as a thing.
I've never liked that, but I think that's why Reach was a very good factor for bringing sprint into the later games. Because, I mean, there was nothing more annoying than just playing something like Halo 3... and your objective is like halfway across, and you basically just got to jump a lot because that's the fastest way to get there.
Yeah, and you might as well just be crawling along. Yeah. It's like, I'll be there very, very soon. That's probably one of the reasons why missions in Halo 3 took so long to do, because you're just sort of lumbering along.
Yeah, particularly if you lost like all vehicles that were available as well. You just had to kind of jump to the objective instead.
Yeah. Even the weapon selection this time I do really like. I actually really love the DMR. I've always liked that one.
Always preferred this version of the DMR compared to Halo 4. To an extent. To an extent.
I prefer the reticle of Halo 4, but I prefer the design from Reach. Because the reticle for Reach is just terrible. It's pointless, actually.
It's just like a little dot.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, like, the weapon selection is really good. I love the version of the assault rifle here. I think that also works really well. Really, all of them are good. Even the pistol is pretty solid, if not one-shot hunters.
A heavier pistol compared to like 3 in that. It feels like a very last resort weapon in the older Halo games, whereas this one, it's like, oh yeah, I can actually kill Covenant with this thing now.
Yeah. We've already spoken about the ending. I will say about the score. Here's a bit of a hot take. For the most part, I think I might prefer the score to Reach to really any other game in the series. And I'm being careful because I love the main theme. just brilliant for like Halo, and of course the music at the end of Halo 3. But I also really love a lot of the music from Halo 4, so it's pretty close.
Yeah, I'm the same, to be honest. I think I like Halo Reach a little bit better for its ambience. But, I mean, it comes very close with 4, and I mean, I love the Halo 4 score. I mean, I like all the scores, but, I mean, Reach's scores just feels that little bit more atmospheric, I think. It's just a lot more ambience.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, like, it's deliberately different. I think there's only one instance where you actually hear the Halo theme in it, and it's the bit that, you know, going back to the whole thing of emotional impact, the score does a good job of that, and it's during Exodus when you get on the Falcon and you're sent over to the other side of the map, and one of the civilian cruisers starts to go up, and then it gets shot down. The music that plays during that is really, really good, and you do hear just a little bit of the original theme, and then I'm like, subtle. I like that. Because again, there's no point in using it, because diegetically there's no reason to, because, you know, it fits in closer with like the Master Chief story than this. It would be like having that theme in ODST, which I don't think you ever hears. But overall, I think the score for this is still fantastic. I still listen to it quite often. And yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. It's still, it really fits the tone of this game a lot more than the previous ones did. Graphically, I'm curious to see your thoughts of the way this film game looks. Film.
Well, I mean, I suppose when we're getting to like the development of the game and stuff like that, I mean, I'm kind of pleased that they just totally reinvented it. Really, compared. I mean, it definitely feels a lot more realistic compared to like the older ones, because the older ones are a little bit more cartoony. I think not that that's a bad thing, but it's just like everything looks a bit more real now, like all the like the scratches on the weapons and stuff like that, and like the actual
I do really like that
aging of the armor and stuff like that. It just looks a bit better.
No, I would definitely say the same thing. I mean, I think I'd probably say this is, especially in terms of like the Spartans for the design, it's probably still possibly my favorite. And that probably goes back to the fact that you can customize your Spartan anyway, but just the designs of all of them, I think, are possibly the best. And I think I like it even more after Halo 4 released, when they brought back customization for your Spartans for Halo 4, but everything looks very clean.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to like Halo 3, where everything just looks a bit too clean, but I always like that sort of like weathering of the armor and stuff like that. Like, you're in the battlefield, you're not going to be clean.
Yeah, and it's still like one of the most visually distinct of the series, and we didn't really get like down and dirty like armor designs, I think, really again until Infinite rocked up, which even then that found a good balance between the two. But overall it still looks pretty solid for a game from 2010, especially when it got ported over to the Master Chief Collection. I'm like, wow, this looks quite good. Yeah. Especially in 60 frames per second. Still
even
plays
like
really
the little
well.
things in graphical upgrade, like sparks and stuff like that, like seeing things like hit off stuff. Like there's, like in the other ones, there's nothing really there, but with this one, it's like even the little things matter in this game. Like there's actual like plasma burns and stuff like that on the walls, and sparks of when you hit stuff, and like there's just a lot of little things that make it good. Really, that like I think that's quite overlooked, to be honest. I mean, even like the appearance of the enemy and stuff like that, it looks really good. Like the hunters, I think probably the best one, because in the other ones they don't look as intimidating, whereas this one, it's a massive hulking thing with a giant shield. It looks terrifying.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think this is also my favourite like visual depiction of the Covenant, especially for the elites. I think they look really, really threatening. Hunters as well.
Honestly, when I first played that game, and then seeing an elite zealot charge at you with an energy sword, terrifying.
Yeah, actually quite scary, as it turns out. Especially the end of Winter Contingency, trying to deal with that one. The one I always found the funniest was the one you're trying to catch in Tip of the Spear.
Oh yeah.
I distinctly remember just randomly throwing a grenade at one of the weapon cache box things, and it just flying across the map and then slamming right into the Zealot, and I was like, peak cinema.
Yeah, because then
That
Cat's
was-
like, oh, the target's down. I'm like, you should have seen that.
I'm like, no, he is disintegrated. He is squashed.
he is flat, is what he is.
In terms of multiplayer, as I say, I didn't play much of the online side of things as everyone else did until much later. So I spent most of it on Firefight.
I did quite a lot
Which-
of the multiplayer stuff on Reach, admittedly.
Go on then. Tell me.
I mean, definitely Firefight. I mean, I love Firefight on Reach. I think it's probably the best one to date with Firefight. It's just a shame that it's been sort of cut out, really, because I've always enjoyed Firefight.
It's also possible that might be coming to Infinite.
Oh, I hope so.
Again, just like it's like another rumor that I've heard. But yeah, I mean, it's weird because I've heard some people really don't like the mode. I only don't like it when it's just a load of arcade variants that you end up being ported into. So it's essentially Halo with God mode turned on.
Yeah, I
And
don't
I'm
like the
I can
different
play this
like,
for 5 or 10 minutes.
modes that it gets sometimes. I mean, some of them are fun, and some of them are just a bit like overkill. Like, there's one where, like, I think you get
Can we
like
just agree that
4 or
like
5 overshields and you're pretty much invincible.
yeah? Can we just agree that Gruntpocalypse is probably the funniest
Oh,
one?
Gruntpocalypse is
Just all
hilarious.
grunts all the time. Otherwise, I like tweaking which enemies are in each wave, and I was like, you know what? It's always going to be the hunters, just for
Yeah.
fun. And you're just like, yeah, that was a bad idea.
That was a
really, really
terrible,
bad idea.
terrible idea.
Like if Firefight was in Combat Evolved, yeah, easy, absolutely fine.
Yeah, 'cause
just have the
one shot
glorious
with a
pistol.
magnum.
That's fine.
Done.
Exactly, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I played Firefight a ton, and I remember us binging through it a lot during COVID, just because, you know, I think we'd eventually finish the campaign. I'm like, let's keep playing, but not the campaign. Let's just go to Firefight, please. And there were some fun moments in that for sure. There was a lot of swearing and flying around the map and just causing absolute chaos for each other.
Yeah. But with the multiplayer side, pretty much like every game mode I played at some point. The most hated one was Infection.
I liked
though.
SWAT.
I really didn't like Reach's Infection mode because you just got those absolutely idiotic campers who would just basically sit in like an out of bounds area that you couldn't get to, and it was just so annoying.
Yeah, you still get
Yeah,
that whenever I end up
When
on
I
it,
when I
on, like,
went through the
an-
Master Chief Collection, I deliberately filtered out the Reach Infection because you just get them. But I liked SWAT as well. I quite like SWAT. Slayer, though I got a bit bored of Slayer eventually. I think just playing that through other Halo games, I was a bit sick of it. But I really, really liked Big Team Battle and Invasion.
Yeah, Invasion is annoyingly one that's never popped up again. And I'm like, I really like this. This is really
Yeah,
cool,
'cause it was,
especially because
I
it
think
is
they,
like
they kind of do it like where they wrote us something in and then they wrote us something out, and Invasion like occasionally pops in. But I think Invasion's really fun because it's like you're not just like Spartan versus Spartan. It's actually like, okay, you can do the Covenant. Like they actually have a bit more of a purpose here. Like you can apply your own playstyle to a Covenant force. It's pretty cool, I must admit.
I mean, granted, there's not much of a difference beyond some visuals, but it's still fun.
Oh, yeah.
for sure. It's just annoying that I played it after the fact, like after like the player count already started to drop. I think, of course, like one of the biggest additions and also improvements is Forge mode,
Yeah.
which of course was introduced in Halo 3. Used a tiny bit in ODST, I think.
Besides
and
some
then
like
massively
maps,
overhauled
that was
for
it,
Reach.
Besides ODST, I think ODST
Yeah.
just brought in a few maps, but it was pretty much just 3.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because with 3, I was never a big fan, because all you could do is place some, I don't know, like boxes or vehicles and stuff. Here, you can actually create, you know, structures in some shape or form. I remember doing that a lot. I can distinctly remember. I'm sure it's actually still saved somewhere. I was actually able to make like a town street that was like walled off all around the ends, and like little buildings that you could sort of hide in and stuff. Mostly for Infection, frankly. I think it worked quite well for that, but I spent way too long on that. Like I spent weeks, frankly.
Yeah.
Because one of the issues that I've had with that version of Forge, unless I completely missed this, is actually an improvement on the Halo 4 side of things, where there's a magnet sort of system, so you can actually just link everything together, and you don't have to like, and you don't have to line up perfectly.
Yeah, I think
like,
that was
section by section.
Reach. Like, I mean, it was very like open worldy Forge, and it was great, but it was annoying when you were making structures and you had to line up everything perfectly, and you'd spend ages just doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most accessible version of Forge.
Oh, yeah.
I think, of the entire series. I'm still not sure if it's my favourite, because I like the few additions that Halo 4 has, and I like the fact that you can tweak the design of some of like the plates and stuff depending on the location that you're in. So like, I think one of them was like a space area, one was like a foresty area, so therefore the colours and designs of the like the objects was different. Here it's just Forerunner. It's just grey.
It's just all
like,
grey.
It's all grey. It works really good for like a racetrack, of which the racetracks on Forge mode were actually
honestly,
really cool.
I mean, it is absolutely just that one color. I mean, you could like change like the color outline of some things to like a particular color.
Pointless.
But it was pointless because it's still Forerunner grey. Like, honestly, it's like going into like a paint shop and just asking for Forerunner grey.
Yeah, actually, going back to home base and being like, yeah, I'd like the Forerunner scheme, please, and like, say no more. I know exactly what it is.
I want to make a structure, but I just want all of it to be the same color. Say no more. Got the perfect thing.
Yeah. But no, Forge is one I've always really enjoyed, and it's just funny going back to every now and again. I'm like, wow, this hasn't actually aged terribly. It's still pretty spot on.
I think another thing that annoys me about the Reach Forge is that you have a budget. Like, I never liked that.
Yeah. The thing is, I understand for games back then, mostly because of memory issues, fair enough. And then every single game after that increased the budget. Like, even Halo 4 was getting so big that between changing from a monitor to a Spartan, and then pops up with generating lighting, please wait.
Yeah.
Whereas Reach, it's immediate because it doesn't do that. We'll get to the Forge side of things on Infinite later on in the year, because I need to actually use it. because currently I think it's the most inaccessible version of Forge, because it's so specific. Like, you can literally change the code of what you're actually doing. It's like, if you throw a grenade, this will happen. I'm sure you can set it so that if you throw a grenade, it can turn into a Banshee or something. I'm like, behold
my magical powers.
Exactly. It's just like a magic trick. I'd have to properly go into it because it took forever for it to even be released. I think I'm sure it was only released like this year, maybe last year. But yeah, overall the Forge mode for Reach I still really like, even if a couple of niggles. But overall, I mean, the game still works. I think for me, it's certainly not my favourite. We'll get to that later. Subtle. But as I say, it's still one I'm more than happy to replay quite often. But it's mostly down to the gameplay for me, and that's amazing score, which I think is quite underrated, probably similar to ODST's score.
Yeah,
both of them are fantastic for what they are. Like you couldn't use the ODST score in Reach; it just would not work at all. Although I am trying to picture Reach with a saxophone.
I think it would work to an extent on New Alexandria, because it just kind of has that same feel to it that ODST has, like with the whole city in the night kind of thing, whereas Alexandria is kind of a bit more dusky and stuff like that. I think it would work to an extent. But yeah, I mean, I always like the tonal shift. Like, you don't actually feel invincible in this one compared to the other games, particularly Combat Evolved, where you just feel like you can take on the entire world, which you pretty much do in that game. You blow up a ring, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, you kind of do, don't you?
But with this one, it's like, oh, you're actually not invincible this time around. Like, the Covenant actually does pose quite a significant threat to you.
Yeah, to be honest, yeah, I remember Bungie saying like they wanted to go back to making them feel like a real threat, and even though it just means that by doing that they just populate the map with just a load of grunts and stuff, which doesn't really help, but every now and again you get I think again it works for tip of the spear very, very well. It works really well for Exodus, especially because it introduces the brutes as well, which I forget every now and again. Because at that point I hadn't played Halo 2 or even Halo 3, so I had no knowledge of like, why should I care about the brutes? I don't actually care. In fact, I didn't play Halo 2 until the Master Chief Collection, and even then I was like, I'm not touching that.
I'm not touching that.
I've heard too many bad things. I'm not touching that, and I wish I hadn't.
I'm not touching that one. 15-foot plasma rifle.
And even then, I don't even think the plasma rifle would be good enough, and it wouldn't be long enough. It had to be even longer. No. But yeah, it's weird, because I'll say that I do genuinely quite like Halo Reach, but as I say, it's by no means my favourite in the series, but I can see why you would think that it's possibly your favourite alongside 3.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a tough choice, really. I suppose it just depends on like what you feel like playing. Like if you feel like you want a bit more realism, then Reach. But if you just want to play like a game where you can just basically kick ass and take names, then you play 3.
Yeah, I think story for the most part for 3, combat and gameplay for the most part for Reach.
Yeah.
So it's a weird blend there. It's a shame we can't have this. It's a shame we can't have both, just in one game.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it is with Reach? I suppose we haven't really talked about the difficulty aspect of it. Like, Reach is difficult on Legendary, particularly Long Night of Solace, but it for the most part, it's doable. Like, it is quite a fun challenge, generally. Whereas, like, Halo 2 just isn't fun remotely.
No, it's not actually. Yeah, to be honest, we didn't actually talk about the difficulty. Yeah, I mean, I didn't play Legendary until I did it with someone else, because I thought, not even going to try.
See, I did it solo.
But yeah, it's...
I don't know how I did it solo without it breaking me, but I did it.
Slowly,
Yeah.
I assume. But yeah, in terms of like final thoughts, I'm still pretty positive on this. It's weird, to be honest, because I sound like I don't really know what I think, but it's because there's so many good things in it, but then there's enough iffy things that just sort of brings it down a bit.
Yeah.
But overall, I still quite like it, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I mean, I think it still holds up very well all these years later.
Be curious to see what happens with Halo 4. That's going to be the interesting one for me.
Her follow.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, her follow. But yes, that's our thoughts on Halo Reach. We hate it, obviously. Absolutely despise the thing. No, actually, no. We do like it, and it's been nice talking about that one again, and talking about Halo once again. But yes, thank you very much for listening. Next week, we're going to be celebrating Batman Day, and not talking about the Dark Knight trilogy, because why the hell would we? We can do that in January. We're talking about the first version of Batman on screen, with Batman 1943. Of its time, I think it's safe to say, but should be quite fun. And Dan's sort of grinning, just like, yeah, we've got to talk about a racist Batman. Yay!
I'll start watching that very soon.
Yeah, that should be fun. Well, it's fine, because I'm actually away to Scotland next week, so we'll figure out how that's going to work timing-wise. But what are we going to be discussing on Graveyard Chit Chat, Dan?
I can't say.
Well, yeah, you can.
I can't, because then you're going to know, and then it ruins the surprise.
I already know.
Oh yeah, you do. I thought
getting out the fez again.
I thought we would refer to the next one. We haven't even recorded the previous one. No, we're talking about one of mine and Regan's favourite childhood films, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island from 1998. That's going to be an interesting rewatch.
Well, I'm already halfway through the film and I'm just absolutely loving it. I'm like, this is so good.
It's beautiful.
Bugger. It's just gorgeous. But yes, we'll be talking about Batman 1943 on episode 66 of the Real Podcasters, and we'll be discussing a bit of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island on episode
24.
24? 24. Episode 24 of Graveyard Chit Chat. So make sure to support that podcast as well, and this one. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, social medias all in the description as ever. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you for the next episode. And until then, it's goodbye from Dan.
Ta-ra.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.